My name's still Anne Vanderelst, and I still talk of musicals. I tried to come up with a different Mean Girls intro, but will anything ever be as iconic as Regina George's entrance? I think not. Guys, this is me doing cozy lighting. What do you think? Too dark? Well, you're just gonna have to live with it. It's already been 10 months since I made my Mean Girls comparison video. Whoa, time flies. And believe me, the urge to revisit my favorite topic has been quite honestly unbearable. Luckily, someone in the comments asked for my opinions on the West End version, seeing apparently it differs quite a lot from the Broadway version. Is that so? Well, I have been prioritizing watching other shows over Mean Girls because I had already seen the musical adaptation in New York back in 2019, but if I have to go watch Mean Girls again, I have to. I need to give the people what they want. And by the people, I mean me. I want to watch Mean Girls over and over again. If you're new to my channel, hi, welcome. Like I said, I talk about musicals, and mainly I compare musicals, which is exactly what I will be doing in this video today. Today's topic obviously is the Mean Girls musical, and we're gonna compare the West End version to the Broadway version. Let's find out which version is the apex predator. I have neighbors, I forgot. Now with my other videos, I usually go quite full out with the editing and everything, and I love it, but let's just be honest, Mama has no time. You know, I thought, let's do something different. This is not a regular video. This is a cool video. Note the oodie and the no makeup. Whoa. You know, I might even read from my script sometimes. The epitome of chill. I don't know why my nose is red. I'm not ill, I swear. Maybe I'm drunk. I think it might be... yeah. It's my eczema. My eczema's flaring up. Well, we're gonna do without makeup because this video is a cozy video. Ooh, oh god, I look horrendous. Maybe I should put a little bit of... No makeup. This is the real Anne. Love it or leave it. Please don't leave it. So with that in mind, I thought let's just ditch the whole scoring system. Let's just sit back and have a nice relaxed chat about Mean Girls the musical. Okay, so straight away the West End makes quite a significant change. Instead of Janis and Damian addressing the audience as the narrators, they're now talking at North Shore's newly annual mandatory friendship workshop. A fun little hint at what's to come, it's cute. The opening on Broadway always felt a bit rough around the edges, so I'm happy that the creatives decided to ground this scene a bit more. Janis and Damian are pretty much still introducing themselves as the narrators of the show, but now they also established the world of North Shore High. Very funny, very effective, off to a great start. Their opening speech has become quite a bit longer though, exploring the question, what does it mean to be a good person? Spoon feeding the message of the show straight away to the audience just to make sure that they do get it. Perhaps not off to that great a start after all. They will not leave this song alone, will they? I'm already so pleased that they didn't replace it with the atrocity that was What Ifs from the movie musical, but still, I don't know if I'm just being incredibly biased because It Roars is in my audition folder, so like, I know it incredibly well, but I think this new version completely voids Cady of her personality. We don't get her quirky, I say quirky, quirky. We don't get her quirky. I can't say quirky. See, I can! We don't get her quirky, defiantly optimistic side anymore. Just like in the movie musical, we get introduced to Cady when she's angry with her mom. Yes, only her mom. That does not make a comeback. The West End decided to stick to the movie musical's choice of Cady being raised by a single mom. I don't think meeting Cady in that typical angry teenager place is the best way to introduce us to her. In the Broadway version, we get to see her life in Kenya a bit more, and she explains that she feels lonely, that she misses being surrounded by peers. She tries to confide in her lions, but they keep biting her. Talk about specificity. In this new version of It Roars, Cady simply wants change. A change from what? Damian quickly says that Cady dreams of getting away from her mother before the song starts, so I guess we just have to take that comment as the lens through which we have to interpret these frankly incredibly generic lyrics. Did you ever get a feeling that the sky could be much bluer, the grass could be more green, the horizon twice as wide? Girl, you're in Africa. How wide a horizon do you want? I know it's a metaphor, but still. What is this epidemic, by the way, lately, of giving your lead girl the most boring I Want song? I'm referring to Andy's song in The Devil Wears Prada. I don't know if this actually is happening in any other show than these two, but you know. I like to exaggerate. It's interesting how recycling the same lyrics doesn't work out as well in this version. The section that goes, "Did you ever get a feeling everybody else is happy, everybody else has friends and they're better friends than yours," that works incredibly well in the OG version because she's already established that her only friends are lions. In the West End version, she sings this after the Wide Horizon lyric. The only framework we've received so far is that Cady wants to get away from her mother, so why are we suddenly talking about friends? Feels a bit disconnected. Apparently It Roars has already received multiple makeovers with the US tour and then the high school edition, and that is something that is very noticeable. This Frankenstein version just doesn't hold up. It doesn't give us much of Cady's backstory anymore, nor does it define a clear goal for her. But I think the biggest thing I miss in this It Roars is the comedy. On Broadway, the lyrics are filled with jokes, but in the West End, they kind of keep the jokes for the scenes. It doesn't work for me. Damian and Janis start the show off by making us laugh, and then the first interaction we have with our lead girl slows all of that momentum down, making us associate her with a more boring, almost sad vibe. Another giant loss is skipping the animal world setup. One of the defining features of Cady in the 2004 film is that she makes sense of the world around her through the lens of the animal kingdom. In the original It Roars, we have lyrics about her peers such as, "Like baboons, it's natural day attack," laying that groundwork for when her peers actually portray animals in Apex Predator. But West End Cady barely talks about animals at all. And so without the setup, I thought Apex Predator kind of felt out of place. And another thing, I'm sorry, I'm aware that I have a lot of things to say about It Roars. When she first meets Aaron, Cady says that she moved there to make human friends, which is a line that doesn't land at all if you don't show us first her lion friends. Ooh, okay, clearly I had a lot to say about It Roars. I promise that I won't spend as much time discussing the other topics. But will I though? Don't make promises you can't keep, Anne. Instead of going to the reprise of It Roars after the sexual health class, the West End decides to squeeze in another classroom scene before Cady's bathroom lunch, AP Calculus, where we of course meet Aaron Samuels. On Broadway, this scene takes place after Cady gets invited for lunch with the Plastics. So the West End moved this moment forward quite a lot actually. Diehard fans of the original will know that this is a scene where Cady sings Stupid with Love, but the West End decides to separate Stupid with Love from this first scene and to just continue with the reprise of It Roars. But how do they then finish that scene, seeing normally Cady just interrupts Aaron and starts singing? Thank you for asking. The West End version adds a bit where Cady hits her pubic bone on her desk. OMG, so embarrassing in front of her crush. Not my favorite edition, but obviously the writers had to come up with something in order to make it possible to move this scene forwards. But why, oh why is it so darn important that this moment happens earlier? Well, it's to help smooth out a later transition. In Broadway, we go from Plastics inviting Cady to have lunch with them, to AP Calculus where Cady sings Stupid with Love, to Damian and Janis discussing the cultural significance of the color pink, to Cady's first official lunch with the Plastics. But because the West End moved AP Calculus to the classroom montage at the start of the show, the story now follows a more natural flow of Cady being invited for a lunch with the Plastics, straight to Damian and Janis talking about pink, and then the lunch with the Plastics. It does make more sense. My one tiny question about this change is whether or not we still need Janis and Damian discussing the cultural significance of pink. I feel like in the Broadway version, it was mainly added to bring the audience back into the plastic world after AP Calculus, you know, to remind them of the pink shirt rule. But now that we don't first go to AP Calculus, do we still need this intermezzo? If the whole point is to smooth out the transition, why not just go from one scene straight into the other? Unless, of course, this serves a more technical purpose, like perhaps allowing time for a costume change. I'm not saying that I'm fundamentally against this color pink discussion. I'm just wondering whether this is a leftover from a previous iteration that maybe is not needed anymore. Moving AP Calculus forward means that instead of Aaron's reprise of Stupid with Love in the second Calculus scene, we get a little montage of Cady struggling to flirt with Aaron, followed by her singing Stupid with Love. Not the reprise, just the first normal song. Although it does incorporate Aaron's reprise now. Praise the Lord that the West End stayed away from the movie musical's lackluster soft instrumental of this song. They did, however, make some lyrical changes, of course, which I had no real issue with, if I'm honest. One small thing that I thought didn't land as well was Aaron's announcement that he's taking a break from dating, which is a shame, of course, because it's quite essential information. Aaron swearing off of dating gives Cady the idea to act like she's dumb. Quite an important plot point, point and moment in Cady's character journey, I would say. They still give the line a moment to breathe, but I think because the melody now goes up, it somehow makes it less comprehensible. Or maybe I'm just deaf. Like now it goes completely done with dating. Whereas in the original, it went swearing off of dating. I'm being finicky, of course, but I think they should have kept that from the original. Damian's song Where Do You Belong also gets a lot of tweaks. Now again, I'm comparing the original Broadway version to the West End version, but I know a lot of these changes were already in place for the US tour, so not all of these lyrical changes are inherent to the West End show is what I'm saying. I was planning on going unnecessarily detailed vibes for this bit, but oh my god, there are just so many small, insignificant changes that I honestly cannot be bothered discussing them all. Things like varsity jocks and JV jocks will throw you in a locker if you say hello are now think they're heroes because they play with balls, presumably to add some humor. The rich stoners hate the gangster whites becomes young Marxists hate the wealthy preps. Is it to avoid any mention of race? Like I said, I'm not going to discuss them all, especially seeing that none of them actually affect the plotline of the show. I think the lyrics of this song specifically though have been workshopped over and over because Damian is essentially placing everyone in a box, which is, you know, something that's not very woke. So I think the creatives really tried to ensure that no one would take offense to the lyrics at all. But obviously that contributed to everybody's critique of the movie musical that the mean girls aren't that mean anymore. And I agree, I think the pendulum has swung too far the other way now, but hopefully that means that we're one step closer to finding a happy medium. Where Do You Belong is actually a prime example of a trend that keeps occurring in the West End show, namely entire sections are cut out of songs. Here it's Janis and Damian's geeks and the freaks and the peaking too soon. That whole section gets the chap. In Meet the Plastics, it's the layering of the three melodies, which is a bit of a shame because musically that's a very interesting part, but it is true that it doesn't really push the story forward. Another victim of this trend is the song More Is Always Better, where Cady's verse where she sings that she's better than Regina also gets scrapped. Speaking of More Is Always Better, in the West End version, it's actually Regina who coins the term More Is Always Better when she's talking to Cady about heels. This mantra becomes one of the signifiers that Cady slowly is turning into Regina. The West End version really invested a bit more in showing that Cady is becoming more and more like Regina specifically, not just any popular girl. In Blowing Up, the new opening of Act 2, Cady has the same iconic entrance as Regina does in Meet the Plastics, standing on that cafeteria table. When Regina comes to school in sweatpants and therefore is denied access to the lunch table, Cady copies Regina's tactic from earlier where she makes people vote on Jason's voice by making everyone vote on whether or not Regina has to adhere to the rules like everyone else. I love this because it makes Cady still somewhat come across as innocent when in reality she's obviously the one that has spearheaded the Hate Regina campaign. Another element in the West End version kept from the movie musical is Janice's description in the Burn book as Pyroles. Janice's backstory is yet another element that has survived so many reworks that it has become extremely convoluted at this point. From simply being called the D word in the 2004 film to becoming a space D in the original stage version to Pyroles in the 2024 film, it's clear that these alterations were made to exclude any use of slurs. But and I already mentioned this in my previous Mean Girl comparison video, the fire element is so random to me. Now it's just like, oh, she went to art therapy for it, it's fine. Just feels a bit clumsy, you know? In the West End version, Damian even states that it's complicated before he explains the backstory, which I guess at least the writers are self-aware. Don't get me wrong, obviously I do not prefer the space alien with 4 butts. I think the pyromania could have been a thing if only it was just worked more into the story. So, a big change here. The West End cuts out Fearless and makes Revenge Party the Act 1 finale. So let me talk you through how that works. The song stays pretty much the same, but instead of finishing after Gretchen spills the secret that Regina cheats on Aaron with Shane Omen in the lion costume, ew, the song continues and includes Cady's text to Aaron telling him about the cheating. On Broadway, the texting scene happens after the song and gets interrupted by Miss Norbury pushing Cady to be better, which obviously bleeds into the scene where she tells Karen and Gretchen that Miss Norbury is a drug pusher. This infamous drug pusher scene is now pushed to the second act in the West End. But okay, so after the texting, we go straight to the Christmas talent show, now featuring Cameron's Holiday Coochie Slam instead of the Transformers from Broadway. Kevin G and the Power of Three, their act also gets entirely cut from the West End, RIP. Gretchen then comes running in to warn everybody that Aaron just broke up with Regina in the hallway, and after some abuse from Regina, let the record state that it's not the iconic switch sides dialogue, which I will never forgive the musicals for cutting out, we get a little rocking around the pole intermezzo where Gretchen suddenly has a meltdown. This outburst is a new addition. On Broadway, the girls just dance and suddenly Regina's skirt falls off. But here in the West End, somehow Gretchen's meltdown makes Regina's skirt fall off? Yeah, I'm not sure if I fully understood what happened there. The West End then completely cuts Damian and Janis's talk about social media, so the whole everyone starts to like Cady on Instagram section is out. We just go straight to You Can't Sit With Us, culminating in that final chorus of Revenge Party, which ends Act 1. No return of Regina to pick up her Caltine bars, and sadly also no vest reveal from Karen. Remember when I said that the section where all the students start to like Cady on Instagram was cut out of the West End show? Well, that turns out not to be entirely accurate. The opening of Act 2 actually includes a little montage of everyone telling their Cady stories, just like they did about Regina. All the stories are different than the ones from Broadway though, and very much in the vein of like, Cady's not like other girls. Like one of the lines is something like, I asked Cady what his skincare routine was and she said she washes her face with soap. You get what I mean. She's very much still being portrayed as not a girly girl, but then that instantly gets contradicted by the show when she sings Blowing Up, the new opening of Act 2, in a very girly outfit and is getting very annoyed with Gretchen. So it's safe to say that Cady has essentially completed her Regina clone transformation. And wouldn't you say that Regina is like the epitome of a girly girl? So what is it? Is Cady not like other girls and uses normal soap to wash her face? Or is she the ultimate queen bee? I feel like the creatives got a little bit lost in the woods there. The original Act 2 opener was Damian's song Stop, but the West End swaps it out for Cady's Blowing Up, which is a bit sad, but ultimately I do agree that the opening of Act 2 should probably be about our protagonist's transformation. And the Mrs. Norbury pushing Cady scene is now actually part of Blowing Up. In the original opening scene of Act 2, Cady is obsessing over Aaron, leading to Damian singing the song Stop. But as we don't need a setup for that song anymore, Cady instead now talks about Mrs. Norbury being a drug pusher. When Janis and Damian don't react very strongly to this statement, Cady also tells Gretchen and Karen, which is what happens in the original. You know, when I was watching the show, I was kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. Cady repeating the drug pusher story is a nice solution for the loss of Stop, and it also shows us that Janis and Damian are kind of getting fed up with the new Cady. But the more I think about it, the more I think that Cady repeating this drug pusher story is actually doing her character quite a big disservice. In the original, Cady says that Mrs. Norbury is a pusher. It's actually Gretchen who coins the term drug pusher. In a fit of rage, she's not thinking straight. Having Cady consciously repeat this drug pusher notion paints her as malicious. She now no longer accidentally starts this rumor. Oh, no. Now she comes up with the word drug pusher and spreads it to different groups. Making your lead girl this unlikable is a bit of a questionable choice, I would say. Sure, the story is about a nice girl losing her way and becoming a mean girl, but I don't know if this pushes it ever so slightly too far. Ruining someone's life by having them sent to jail classifies as more than just your typical mean girl from high school. And that's exactly why the original film works so well, because even though Cady's actions cause real life consequences, like for example Miss Norbury, but I'm also thinking of Regina getting hit by a bus, through it all we're still on Cady's side because she never intended for those things to happen. Now she knowingly spreads very serious accusations about a teacher. Yeah, sure, probably she still didn't mean for them to be taken seriously, but at the same time she also doesn't really care about the fact that they might get taken seriously. She's inconsiderate. I don't know, I think I just needed a tiny cushioning of I never meant for that to happen to counteract Cady's wrongdoings. Also a very small detail, but I do think that it's very important. In the West End version, Gretchen never hands the burn book to Cady for her to write down about Miss Norbury being a drug pusher. The peer pressure Cady experiences at that point is another element that makes us root for her. Now we just have to imagine that at one point Katie perhaps willingly writes about Miss Norbury in the burn book. Most of Act 2 stays pretty much identical, except for Cady's moment of self-reflection. On Broadway, once Regina gets hit by a bus, we get a few Instagram comments speculating whether or not Cady pushed her, followed by Cady defending herself and in doing so slowly understanding the severity of the situation. Cady sings a reprise of Fearless, which ends in her owning up to the drug pusher rumor. The West End version I keep talking about virgins. I'm so sorry. I want to say version. I don't even hear the difference anymore. Virgin. Virgin. I'm losing my mind. The West End version dials up the amount of rumors and also adds in Coach Carr's hormones joke. This swiftly moves into a scene where Principal Duval announces that Miss Norbury is on a leave of absence. Obviously, given that Fearless didn't make the West End show, Cady now sings a reprise of It Roars. And at the end of that, she also takes responsibility for the drug pusher rumor. Quite a clever way, I think, to work around the fact that Fearless got cut but still incorporate the same story beats. The 2018 musical adaptation resurrected a deleted scene from the original film, Regina and Cady making up. The West End kept this olive branch moment, but this time it takes place at Regina's house instead of in the bathrooms at the Spring Fling. Which means that now, when Cady arrives at the Spring Fling, we go straight to the announcement of the King and Queen instead of first to the bathrooms. Which really helps in terms of keeping up the momentum. In this version though, Regina mentions that Janis also paid her a visit. Feels like quite an important change in their relationship dynamic to just casually drop mid-conversation and to then never talk about ever again. But alright, the West End clearly was on a mission to make the show shorter, so we'll just be happy with the breadcrumbs that we get. Karen's texting scene to Cady gets cut. The writers, however, still pay homage to this scene and Karen's verse in Stop by giving her a Get Ready With Me where she explains why she's stupid, but in doing so ends up proving that perhaps she's not that stupid after all. This marks the start of a giant reprise of Stupid with Love. And another one bites the dust. Do This Thing gets swallowed up by this giant reprise of Stupid with Love. I like the idea of redeeming this song that started with her pretending to be stupid to now a celebration of her intelligence. But I do miss a certain element of pride. Do This Thing had this lovely, albeit slightly cheesy, message of owning who you are, doing your thing. Now the focus is more on treating others with respect. This reprise still keeps similar elements like the montage of all the answers in the Mathleys competition, and of course the sudden death round, but sadly the iconic "the limit does not exist" quote doesn't get as much razzle dazzle as it did on Broadway. In the original soundtrack, Cady belts "the limit does not exist," still being quiet for my neighbors, but here they chose a more realistic approach and have her sing it. Come on, let us indulge. You know the whole bit where Aaron is at the Mathleys competition because he got caught lying about where he lived and therefore has to graduate homeschooled and isn't welcome anymore at the Spring Fling, which made him the only one who was available to be Miss Norbury's assistant at the Mathleys competition? Yeah, that whole bit gets cut. A good choice, I'd say. The whole living out of state thing really felt like some sort of afterthought that was just like last minute put in. But, and this is a big but, it did give us a moment of reconciliation between Cady and Aaron. And Aaron later on making a fool of himself to distract Principal Duval so Cady can sneak into the Spring Fling really makes us want to root for this couple. I want them to have a happy ending. In the fairy tale kind of way, get your mind out of the gutter. In the West End version, Cady and Aaron just have a kiss after the coronation and then that's that. I mean, I love the choice of ending the musical with the girls, you know, to really have that girl power message. But surely there was some wriggle room here or there to have a tiny little moment between Cady and Aaron. Yay, girl power of course, but also can't you just give them like a proper ending as well? So despite the West End making some really strong choices, I think ultimately I still preferred the Broadway version. Obviously it also has its faults, but what I really liked about Mean Girls on Broadway is that it had this sort of self-aware sense of comedy. It felt like the show knew that it was a musical and played up to it in parts. Like for example the animals at the start of It Roars, something which is obviously kind of impossible to portray realistically. That just gets done in a very tongue-in-cheek way, which then in turn helps to tie in the moments where the students portray animals. Mean Girls on Broadway was almost like a parody of the musical medium. Typical elements such as a tap dance number or our protagonist addressing the audience in asides are incorporated because that's what musicals do, right? In that sense, Mean Girls on Broadway really reminded me of Book of Mormon. Something which I later found out was right on the money as they shared the same choreographer and co-director Casey Nicola. A lot of these typical musical theatre elements actually ended up getting cut for the West End version, which is where I feel like the show really kind of lost its spirit. We still see glimmers of it shine through here and there, for example in the assembly scene where all the male chorus members dress up as girls, but because the rest of the show doesn't quite carry that same sense of silly humor anymore, the boys dressing up as girls kind of fell out of place. That being said, if you're ever around London, please do go watch the show because the talent in this cast is actually insane. The vocals were honestly effortless, and these are big things. Imagine singing World Burn 8 times a week and still being flawless. Bruh. brother. I genuinely left the show feeling like I should get my ass back into singing class, like yesterday. But as always, I would love to open up the conversation to you. Have you seen the Mean Girls musical adaptation? If so, which version? And if you have seen multiple, which one was your favorite and why? I honestly think I can talk about this topic forever, so if you want to stay updated about any future Mean Girl vids or any other musical theater video essays for that matter, be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. We're nearly on 7.5k subscribers now, which my little pea brain is really struggling to understand how many of you that is. Hello everyone, honestly so grateful to have you here. Maybe I should make another Mean Girls video when I reach 10k. Or Legally Blonde. I've been really wanting to talk about that more. I just love me a well-written girly musical.